Good evening. We'll call the meeting to order at 7:01. And let me first read the board norms, which are to maintain our focus, communicate respectfully, be present, keep the board productive and effective, and respect the agenda. And let's see, so jumping to changes to the agenda. Under new business, we will remove for this meeting, West River Valley Thrives. That will be moved to our September meeting, so we'll be deleting that for this meeting. And then we will also be adding an executive session. Anything else?
And a second parent tuition request for that, within that executive session.
Okay, so two parent tuition requests in executive session, all right. Okay, anything else? Seeing none, moving on to student report, if we have, let's see, I can't see out there. I do not see.
I got a text that the audience can't hear.
Oh,
Wait there. Okay, try it now.
Go ahead and talk out.
can you hear me now? Can I get a thumbs up out there?
I can hear you now.
Oh, thank you, Rory. All right, thanks, everybody. Okay, all right, just to catch everybody up, I won't go over the board norms again, but we did changes to agenda. We took off the West River Valley Thrives under new business, and we added an executive session with 2 parent requests. All right, everybody's back up to speed, and student report, I don't think we have a student out there. And actually, do we have anybody waiting in the wings for our most recent graduate? Or did we discuss this at the last meeting? If we did, I apologize, I was not at the last meeting, so. This is already done then.
Yes, we could.
Call. Who is it?
Mercer. Dunleavy Mercer.
Colin Dillon, okay. All right. Great. All right, there we go, sorry. Got that, and, all right, so moving on to public comments. Does anybody have anything as we're starting this meeting? Anybody out there?
One person who's not up there is Guy Tabashnik, who's telling me he can't get in. So he says, everybody having trouble getting in? Nope. So it might just be Scotty, he's working on it.
Just you, Scotty.
He's working on it, so bear with him.
Click the blue link, Scotty.
He needs to bundle.
Yeah, right. All right, so as mentioned, we're skipping over the parent tuition request for now. So let's go to old business, and let's start with a recap of JVS school year 24-25 plans.
All right, well, as you guys determined, we are operating a pre-K at JVS. We have a pre-K teacher, we have a pre-K pair, we have an admin assistant. The pre-K teacher will serve as the pre-K director. It was our hope that we'd be able to utilize the admin assistant to be the director because of the administrative element of it, but we didn't have the right qualifications for that. It was more rigorous than I thought. So we have that set up. Greg has set up, if you're familiar with the JVS building, it's the last full-size classroom on the new wing, which faces the parking lot. The small room at the end is being used as an office/library for the teacher. And then, of course, the admin assistant will be in the admin assistant space. The classroom in the middle, we're going to utilize as conference space for different meetings that require spaces that are bigger than the conference room central office, which will start to smell bad soon. And so we're going to utilize some space up there. The old part of the building, the part that faces the road, is on a separate zone of heating, so we'll have that turned down for the winter season, heating season, and that will be, in essence, not mothballed, but lower use area there. And we're going to food. The administrative assistant will drive to Leland Gray to pick up food for lunch and the next day's breakfast, and then bring back and put that in the refrigerator, so the breakfast will be a grab and go. Lunch will be hot, brought directly from Leo and Grace Kitchen. Greg's still working on some details with custodial supports, and trash removal, and a couple other minor details, but, that's what it looks like at this point. So, we shall see how many students end up there and what that looks like, but.
Still not certain at this point?
Well, there were 8 initially, and you're having something today in your executive session that may reduce that or not,
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah.
But, we'll see who shows up first day. So, I don't know, happy to take any questions about what that looks like. I will report out on a related note, the Townsend pre-K is full. Hit the cap this past week, I was told, so they're now at 20. So, any new people coming to Townsend will be directed to JVS.
Is the Townsend, you mentioned it's full, is that, I don't know if you can say how many people are coming from the Jamaica side to Townsend?
I don't have that information. I know there's at least one from Wyndham, maybe? But the rest are all West River. People I don't know where they're, I mean, there's definitely some Newbrook, definitely some Townsend. There might be, actually I know there's at least one Jamaica, because that's the family I talked to today, who was already staying for year 2 of pre-K. So, but a lot of the Jamaica 8 are all from Jamaica. So,
Thank you. Drew?
sorry.
Oh, that, okay. I have a question for Greg, if is Greg Fossa?
Greg is up there.
Greg, do we have a dry or a wet sprinkler system at JVS?
Do you have a who?
Do we have a dry sprinkler system at JVS?
Yeah.
Or-
In Jamaica, there's no sprinkler system in Jamaica.
So we could turn the temperature down as far as we wanted then, below 50.
Yeah, we'll put it into unoccupied mode with the controls, and we should be able to keep it down pretty reasonable, in that far wing. Yep.
You do have some bathrooms down there, though. Plumbing,
True.
and sinks in the classrooms.
Yeah, but regardless though, even if we turn it down, if it gets too low, we'll get the notification and the warning that the room is too low. And like, so even when a room is in unoccupied mode and you drop it down to say 55 or 58, if it gets below that, the boiler does kick on to bring it up. So, I mean, if it doesn't do that, you'll get a notification that you know, that your boiler's down or whatever. So I feel pretty good about being able to do it. We were able to do it at Wyndham last year. We kept the building in unoccupied mode for 20 hours a day. I think we were doing like 6 to 10 in the morning. We would let it go into occupied mode just to kind of bring the building up the temp a little bit. And so we could do that if we wanted. And just having the other part of it be used rather than, you know, and not be just totally empty. So I think that'll help as well. So.
Okay. Thanks, Greg. All right. Anybody else? No? Moving on to long-term planning discussion.
All right, so the last time we met, you guys, I think Lori has captured the charge here. High-level comparison of the status quo, i.e. the FY25 budget versus a single campus model as described in the long-term planning analysis, included by Stevens Associates, using Newbrook as a single campus, pre-K through 5. So, I'm gonna have Heidi and Lori walk us through this a little bit, and I can jump in on the staffing stuff if there's questions. But you can see this is a 4-page document with an overview at the front and then some factors as we go down. So let you guys start us off, and then I'll jump in as needed. Please.
So I also just emailed you an updated version. There was one thing that came to mind afterwards that I put in here. So I'll have Sue put that up on the website as well tomorrow. But so basically the assumptions, right? This is a very high level. Yes.
Sorry, one second. Lindsay brings up a great point. Can we let folks know specifically where this document is so they can play along?
Click into it and
Yeah,
follow
Yeah,
along.
right now it should be linked from the agenda, which is
Okay.
posted on the website. Yep.
Okay. Great, sorry.
Yep, that's okay. So that's the first version. So the assumptions that this makes, because, we were looking at what Stevens and Associates did and what all of the documentation and analysis that they did pointed to was a single campus. So this assumes that Jamaica and Townsend are non-operational. So not any pre-K in the buildings or anything, right? So let's just, make sure that that's clear. And so this is one extreme, right, that we could look at. So Greg put together some one-time setup costs for doing the modular building, which is $655,000. And then we came up with some staffing changes and also building costs that would be saved, which in the 1 year savings would be $1 million. So the one thing I forgot in here was the lease payment, which is $180K. So just keep $180K in your mind, that's a year over year cost that will be additional.
For the modular.
For the modular, sorry. Yes, I know that. Okay, so then some longer term, we looked at the longer term, and the modular can last anywhere from 15 to 20 years. Not that you would want to be in a modular for 15 to 20 years, but as a comparison, all of the capital needs assessments that are needed over the 20 years total $4.5 million for Jamaica and Townsend. So essentially that would be a long-term savings of not putting money into it. So we went down through and looked at staffing. There isn't a lot of savings as far as teachers, because the teachers would move down and you'd have 2 classes. We've talked about that. It's always interesting because you're actually saving that money this year as an actual, right? But budget over budget, it would be a savings. So also keep that in mind, that I'm speaking budget over budget. School nurse.
Actually, we jump in just before you get into that stuff. I did on the bottom of that first page, you can see some of the legal considerations from EQS. Just wanted to, some of them were tighter than some of them more gray, but I wanted to give you guys an idea of what some of the requirements were as you were thinking about this. And we are compliant with all of them, save librarian, we would be a little short on.
Right.
Probably a little short right now on that is my guess, but if once you combine them, it becomes more obvious that you're short. So there is a slight increase in librarian for the elementary school in this budget to take that into account. The rest are all adequate.
If we were gonna go with this model, wouldn't we go with a full FTE of a librarian media and maybe kind of double task a little bit?
I mean, it's possible. The savings and the financials are based on what will be required by EQS. So
Yeah.
just so you have that, it'd be 0.67 or something like that.
Right. And also to point out that the enrollment does include Wyndham students. We don't know how, going all the way to Newbrook would affect that. But we have them in our counts now, so we left them in that count.
But we didn't include them, any tuition in
Right,
this
right. Yeah,
estimate.
on the revenue side of things, we haven't counted the revenue for Wyndham in anything. Okay, so the one office assistant, they're currently, I'm gonna go down to what's really, it's easier to read on the other savings. There's a grid there that sort of shows you what is being reduced and the cost of the potential savings associated. So you can see we did a +1.7 for the library media instead of that negative. So after staffing, we figured there would probably be some amount of savings on the after-school program being at one site. And then the building operations, so this is everything except for the staffing. So this is the oil and the electricity, all of those things to run a building is $286,000. Figured we could save a little bit on supplies, So the total short-term is the 361, added to the staffing is the savings. And then the next grid is basically the one-time cost to put in the, and this is the temporary structure, right? This is not the permanent structure. So how this sort of could all work, right? So as we're looking at it, I'm sure that somebody's gonna ask, well, what is that cost? What is that per pupil cost savings, right? So the way it could work, because remember, we're talking about budget over budget, fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 26, right? So if you were to spend out of your capital reserve or your operational reserve, this $655,000, then the first year your savings is that $1 million, right? Because that is the budget over budget. So what does that equate to? So your cost per pupil for 25 came in at $16,391. This isn't on your sheet because this is, you know, these are real, like that's your cost per student. But we have to compare that now with the threshold that is back into play. So that's, you know, for fiscal year 26, we know there's going to be a penalty. So right now that is coming in, this is an AOE estimate, it will change, it's just a number that they can point to right now with what they know. It was $16,108, so $283 per pupil over the threshold, so that's what you would be double taxed on. So off the bat, you're looking at, if nothing changes, right, and we go forward, business as usual, you're looking at $240,000 cut to get to the penalty for next year, at this point in time, right now. If you were to do this model, okay, just giving you all the facts, right, or the estimates, I shouldn't say facts yet. All the estimates. If you were to do this model and you saved the $1 million over 1 year, then your cost per pupil would be $15,154. So you would be significantly under the threshold. And as it looks right now, it would be about 12.5 cents on the tax rate. That is just if you're looking at 25. I want to be clear about this because it won't be 12.5 cents, right? It'll be something less than that. And it could be something less if you decide to do a modified version of this or nothing at all. It will be more, right? But the 25, I'm looking at using 25's numbers, right? So your student count's going to go down. So, you know, all of those factors, we don't know what the yield will do. Okay, so it's really just looking at, if this were to happen at fiscal year 25, this is what it would look like.
So the 15,154 is likely going to be higher.
Yeah.
There's no increase for raises or benefits in that number. So.
Right.
Okay.
We're just,
Yeah.
right, tasked with looking at the status quo, which is 25, it's budget,
Right.
and the model that.
What would it look like if we reduce it by $1 million? Okay.
Right. Questions? I'm sure there's gotta be some.
Now, these estimated costs, they were on the higher end, right? Like 25,000 for rebranding.
That one was a, we don't really know.
Dark
but we-
word.
Yeah, but we recognize that if you're gonna merge into one building, you don't wanna call it Newbrook.
No.
You're gonna wanna rebrand it, so signage, probably have a t-shirt campaign, like there'd be some expense to that.
Something on the floor of the gym, the sign out front.
Yeah, whatever's involved, so we just put a number in there to have a marker for that, it might be half that, who knows?
Well, I figured you would go high.
On that one, we did, yeah. The others are coming from Greg's estimates. I don't know if he can speak to what, if he suspects those are high, low, or reasonable.
They're about as reasonable as I could come up with. Like for the concrete, I reached out to a gentleman and just said, hey, what are you per yard poured? And he said, well, actually, we had a foundation done recently and it was about 400 a yard. So I said, okay, it's 400 a yard. And then I figured out, 166, 64 wide, 6-inch slab. How many yards is that? Times that by 400. Assuming that, we've had other little projects around that we've moved dirt on and whatnot. And so that they've been costly. And so, just kind of reached out to a couple of guys that I know in the industry and said, hey, what do you think about this? And they said, yeah, at least that. My assumption is you'd have to come up with a bigger water tank. That's going to cost you some money. You have to dig up the water tank at Newbrook, put a bigger one in. You'll have a tying into the power. I figured that out as being so again in Dover where they're doing electric bus, they estimated like between 15 and 20 grand to go 75 feet. So I figured you're probably going to have to pull new power from the pole because odds are, actually not odds are. The building in Newbrook is pretty well maxed out the amount of power they have in it. So if you're going to do this, you'd be way better off just coming from the town and putting a new pole in, especially for this many rooms. So we factored that in at, okay, 75 feet, it being this much times that by 3, that way you could get to the pole. So yeah, I mean, that's just a quick overview of it. If there's anything that sticks out to anyone.
How many classrooms are you adding? How many modulars was it?
8.
It's 8 classrooms, Drew, and I think on each end they have offices and bathrooms.
Right.
It was, yeah, the estimated size was 166 by 64 wide. So however many classrooms however many buildings it's gonna take to bolt that all together. I would assume they would come, if we did something like that, it would come, I would assume basically either in pairs of classrooms, something like that, probably 66 wide, then put together sideways, I would assume. So, and on the concrete too, just so you know, I also sized that up a little bit, thinking that if you decided to ever make that permanent, I mean, we wouldn't want to deal with redoing that concrete in that pad. So I figured we would size that now to be, what would be enough to build on in the future. So I believe it was an 8-inch wall, 4-foot frost wall, 6-inch slab type of thing. So.
So I just want to also talk about I mentioned you could use your operational reserve to do the one-time costs. So I just want to talk about that a little bit. So currently you have in your operational reserves $973,000. You're going to add roughly $400,000 to that this year. That's after taking out the $165 you gave to Greg. Sort of gave to Greg to do all this project.
For security.
And then you've committed 100 out of that in 25 to go to your capital. So somewhere around $1.2 million is what I'm estimating. And I just want to say, we were talking about the cost per student. We were talking about the penalty, right? And I said, no matter what, you're going to have to cut. You're either going to have to cut the budget or you're going to have to buy down the tax rate. And what are you going to use to buy down the tax rate? You're going to use your operational reserve. And so that's a 1-year fix, right? Of buying down the tax rate. So I just want to put that out there so that everybody understands. You are going to have to use probably reserves to get under the threshold, unless we can cut $300,000 out of the budget from just cutting.
We've tried that. But there's nothing left to cut.
Yeah. So we let the taxpayers eat the full bite.
Right. But you will have to, you don't want to send along a penalty if you've got money sitting in the bank, right?
Right.
So that's why I'm saying you would have to use that operational reserve to get under the cap. so that you're not double taxing people
Yeah.
on an already outrageous tax rate.
Yeah.
And yeah, the point that she made when she explained this to me is that by using it to do an investment in something like this, that you're not just giving it away to pay the penalty, you're actually investing in the future operations, while simultaneously bringing the cost down and lowering the tax rate organically through the actual consolidation.
How fast could this, oh, sorry.
Okay.
How fast can, if we were to go with this model, how fast can we get it done, Greg?
School doesn't open for 2 more weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely not pulling it off for this fall, that's for sure. But I mean, it would be ideal if we're gonna make this decision to be soon, right? I mean, we're talking about some pretty high level projects that would require some RFPs or really getting engaged with somebody to put the whole project out to, you know, it would be much easier to do it that way. I mean, there's gonna be a lot of projects that are over 40 grand. So if we split it up ourselves to maybe try to be a little more cost effective, it's going to cost a lot more time. That is what it's going to cost. And so if we wanted to try and shoot for this for next year, time wouldn't necessarily be what we would have. So it would be important probably to, you know, work right with someone like Brad's group and get right in on that real quick and get a site plan drawn up and get some stuff out to bid for next spring, to be digging and pouring and getting things prepped. I mean,
Permitting as well, Greg?
permitting. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Permitting. And so.
So are you saying that it's possible? For
All
next
things are
school year?
possible, buddy.
Time and money.
Okay. But
It
that
wouldn't be
implies,
for lack of trying, okay? How about that? I'll give you that much. It wouldn't be for lack of trying. I mean, if the board decides they want to go this route, you know, I'm happy to pour myself into it to do everything we can to make this happen. So.
and not to pressure the board, but the longer they take to make a decision, the less likely it would actually be ready for next year.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe by mid-year, like a January.
So maybe let's talk about what needs to happen besides the sheer will of the board. What else needs to happen?
Right, because again,
Yeah.
this assumes that the buildings are not being used for anything, right? So goes probably to a town vote.
2 towns.
What's the timeline on the town voting again? For warning and then making sure that there's no ask for a second, you know, like.
Was it 30 to 40 days? You have to do
Yeah,
it.
30 to 40, 30 to 45, something like that. If you
Yeah.
have a window, you would request to do it, and then I think there's a shorter window, 30 days or less after for the certification to ensure that there's no,
Be so.
you know.
I'm assuming you'd want some informational meetings before you have a vote. Yeah.
Yeah.
Feels rather
Good
important.
idea, yeah.
Numbers tied up,
Yeah.
cleaned up, specific, and
As
yeah.
tied up as you can get
Mhm.
them, without knowing exactly what
Just-
everything's gonna cost.
Just
Yeah, go ahead.
for reference to talking about using our reserves to buy down the tax rate as an option to make things work for this same year. We know that that's a 1-year solution. What happens the year after that, just so that it's on camera and we can talk about what the implications of that are.
Sure, well, then the next year you would probably be in the same boat because you'd only buy down enough to get under the threshold. So then you add in all of your expenses that increase, healthcare, you know, all of that. And so you're probably gonna be over the threshold, depending on what the threshold ends up being, right? So each year you're gonna have to buy down the tax rate to get it, you know, in a reasonable level, really, and under the threshold. So that just eats up your reserves, so it's just a constant.
And you're gonna need a bond. Is that what you wanted to do?
I was just wondering, how long
You're gonna.
could we do
right.
that? How long can we buy down our, you know, tax rate and
Sounds
do
like
we
about
have,
4 years.
do we have 3 years of this?
With no money left in the bank.
Right, for
Which
sure.
you wouldn't
Like
wanna
we
put
went
yourselves
bankrupt.
in.
Yeah, not where we wanna be.
Yeah, and getting a bond, if you decided to do this, yes, then you would need a bond, but remember that the threshold The
Includes bonds.
the law
Yeah.
changed, and any new bonds, you can't reduce the penalty by. So old ones you can. So that is in your favor, so you do have an old bond right now. You have one bond that will be done this year, 25, so that's gonna free up $90,000. So there is that going for you. And then the other bond will, it goes to fiscal year 29. It ends in 28, but it's fiscal year 29. And so that's 130,000.
I understand that if we were to bond money to modernize our facilities, that we pay penalty on that?
You don't pay a penalty on it, no. It just doesn't help. In the past, if you were over the threshold, you could reduce that penalty by bond of principal and interest
But
per
you see-
pupil.
but you
If we were to bond that puts us over the penalty, then we're gonna pay penalty?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
That's a new one.
Yeah.
I don't make the rules.
Buy down the tax rate.
So not to put our legislator on the spot, Emily. But.
Well, we're going to.
Connection.
Boy, where to start to unpack that one? Have we, or have legislators thought about the excess spending threshold as something other than completely double taxing those dollars over? I mean, I have credit cards and I hate credit cards, and you know, if you have you're over and it's like 20, 25, 30%. This is 100% for every dollar over. So I don't know if legislatively there's the will to maybe mitigate that a little bit, reduce it to a normal rate. If you had any thoughts, if you don't.
I will
Fine.
say, just so you know, the yield bill, which is what created this path we're on, was done pretty fast in the second half of the session. And as part of the yield bill, the Commission on the Future of Public Education was part of that, and we'll be looking at all of those pieces of what we have in place, as well as school construction, and whether there'll be aid for school construction and everything else. So the concerns about this are, we're not the only ones that are going to have concerns about this. It was essentially taking away all of the everything we could take away to mitigate the changes that were happening. So we were facing a huge pressure from every side to reduce property tax rates this year. So we took advantage of every opportunity to reduce tax rates, including doing exactly what we're discussing here, artificially buying down property tax rates. So I guess I would just caution everybody to be take a deep breath and realize that nothing is in stone beyond what we passed this year in the yield bill, and we all have to deal with that. And it's not just us, everybody's, people are in the same boat we're in, trying to figure out how is this going to apply to our next year's budget. And but I'm just going to say something we've been dealing with all along. This is pushing us into making some really difficult decisions about what our future looks like. And what I am going to continue to advocate for is to make sure that we have as much time as we can to do this thoughtfully. But, the commission has only just wrapped up their first, like setting the stage for what the next steps are. And there's a report due, a preliminary report due in December. Tons of work still to be done on that. Based on what I'm seeing here, I'm going to immediately reach out to folks and say, is this on everybody's radar? I want to make sure everybody, I'm sure it is, because we're not the only ones in this place. But I guess I'm, since I have the floor, I'm going to just say as a board member, it's very important to me that we have as much information as we can have to share with our communities, but before we need to make a decision about what we're going to present to the communities, and we need to allow time to actually present that, because, you know, it wasn't easy even just making the decision that we made for Jamaica this year. And this is significantly more than that. And so we really do need to make some decisions pretty quickly and get feedback, because feedback is what's going to either pass or fail this. And so we need to base it on what we're hearing from our communities and the best we can present. And this is not optimal, because we don't know what the Commission on the Future of Public Education is going to come out with. And it's really not going to be completed for 2 years. You know, the first preliminary report is this year, but then the final report is following. We will try to come up with everything we can to figure out a way to support school districts by maximizing tax rates and everything else we can to make sure that they're supported in this next year. I'm certain of that, because I hear it all the time, you know, because we just don't know what the future is going to look like. But this was a really tough year, and it continues to be. Sorry.
Not your fault, Emily. Thank you. That's very helpful. Appreciate it. And thank you for all the hard work you do.
You're welcome.
Any other thoughts?
Looks like we're between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, I read the shaky ground of not knowing what's going to happen at the higher level, at the state level, but knowing what we need to do first.
The concept of waiting. I don't think we can wait. We have penalties coming back, so clearly they don't want us to wait, or they wouldn't be penalizing us for waiting for them to figure out what's going on. We can't afford to start double taxing. I mean, our tax rate's ridiculous now.
Yeah.
And we've invested how many hundreds of thousands of dollars in capital in buildings that we're now talking about closing in the last couple of years because we haven't made a decision. That's the other thing that's out there. Every year we go forward, we're investing more into the long-term capital that isn't getting us any closer to a long-term plan.
Emily, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say about the excess spending threshold, the penalty. I really do believe the intent of that was to try to get school districts to try to figure out a way they can immediately reduce spending. And I know we just said, well, we've reduced everything we possibly can, and maybe that's true, but maybe it isn't. And I think the idea was to say, is there a way to create incentive to reduce actual spending while we're moving forward with what does the future look like? We've been pretty responsible here in Wyndham Central, I will say, by making sure we have had reserves. But I don't think we should go into this just looking at reserves. I do think we need to be thinking about what we can do in the interim to reduce spending.
Thanks.
I'm assuming that there's probably going to be an article in the newspaper tomorrow about this, so we should probably schedule public hearings, public meetings, because people are going to have a lot of questions. Oh, yeah.
Indeed.
Can I, just to clarify, what happens because the state is a little up in the air, there's a lot of work to be done and hopeful changes to see in the future? We don't know what those are. We can't plan on those things. We have no idea what that could mean. So therefore, if we were to make some change in our district and say, okay, if we were to do this, and then in 3 years or 5 years or whatever time that the state figures out, you know, this new commission has new plans, there's new laws, if it changes, then what, right? We aren't necessarily, there's no like edit undo button, but where do we stand with, if we do this and in 3 years or 5 years, suddenly there's no penalty and money is flowing freely and The golden goose has arrived. And when that happens, then what?
You have an influx of people move in that pay taxes, with children, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking
All
about?
of these things.
They didn't come after.
Yeah. I think the thing to think about in that situation is that A, probably unlikely, but B, this again is a temporary solution, because we're talking about temporary classrooms attached to the back of one of our existing buildings. This is not the 75-year plan, right? This is the right now plan-ish. So that's one thing to think about. Like, you're not building anything. You're just duct taping some temporary classrooms. Hopefully not duct tape. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you're creating an environment where you have a one campus situation for your elementary schools that you could then modify, as Greg said. You could add on to, you could remove them, you could whatever. So I think there's flexibility in this solution. And the other thing I just had you guys think about, I remember going back, I don't know which year it was, several years ago, one of the conversations was about, I don't know if it was the official charge of the committee or not, but it had to do with reducing costs or improving outcomes so that it was worth the cost. So if you think about the thing, and we haven't talked about this in this 4 pages, this was really just financials, but the benefits, the educational benefits of the banding in one site is that improvement that you asked about, and it's financially less. So you're actually getting both of the things that you asked for a number of years ago. Obviously, it's not the ideal because it's in the southern end of the district. Like, there's challenges, obviously, we get that. It involves towns voting and so on and so forth, but it is what you guys had worked towards since the original sweaty Dutton 2018 night.
June.
So that is something to think about. All the work that you guys have been doing has led to this place where you now have a plan which could reduce cost and improve education simultaneously.
The only con is the transportation part of it.
It's not centrally located, correct?
But out of all things that can be con, that is minute in some aspect. Maybe not to the person that experiences it, but from our point of view, it's.
Well, and you have an exhaustive series of feasibility studies, which aren't, this is not an arbitrary thing you guys have come to. This is based on several studies over a long period of time.
Got a lot more pros than we do cons out of this.
But as we talked about a number of years ago, if there was a perfect solution that had no cons, you would have done it 5 to 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, thanks for that last point. This is grounded in objective data over months and months. Most recently, yes, been plenty of other surveys and et cetera done before that, but I feel comfortable that we were very objective in looking at everything. And Stevens came up with a great grading and metric system that kind of helped drive kind of what we already knew anyway intuitively, but it's put the meat on the bone for it. So.
I would also just like to reiterate that we as a board, our goal, our biggest goal is to be here for the kids and provide the best education that we can for every student in our district. We know this plan would be the best education. There are definitely cons, but it does provide the best education, and it also provides the best social emotional environment. So the things that, of all the things that we are here to do, this does them the best. It is not a magic button, but it does them best.
I feel that by going with this, we focus all our resources into 2 areas, Leland and Gray and the elementary school. We've reduced, 2 buildings by we don't have to worry about them, we don't have to share monies, we funds, staff, personnel. We're now focused on 2 buildings, 2 areas of employment, 2 grades per class, the optimum class sizes. We can control how the education goes too, by not having one elementary school do it one way and another do it another. It's all one curriculum style in one building. One head.
One other thing is that this is a short-term solution. This is not a forever solution. And so we also still need to continue the conversation, obviously, of this, but we also need to continue the conversation of what our long-term plan is as a board, as a district. Where do we want our district to be in 10 years and 20 years and 50 years and 100 years?
Right, but this buys us, the modulars last 15 to 20 years. This buys us 10 years at least of breathing room, which gives the legislature time to address some issues and the commissions to work. And, it does serve the kids best short term and allows us to continue to work on the long term versus, spending the money to buy down tax rates for the next 4 years and then wondering where we're going to get that money. This, I think we just have to go out and start talking about it.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I just have a half-formed thought, but I think one of the things that I find particularly concerning in this conversation that I'd like us to address is and the modulars will be good for 15 to 20 years. That for me is I wonder if we can find a way to think our way towards thinking about that long-term plan along with this short-term plan, because it's a big investment in something that if it's a few years, just pushing that a little more, and it doesn't necessarily change the conversation with the community, but how we shift our thinking in terms of whether this is really only a temporary solution or just being cost efficient, not only in the immediate term, but in the midterm.
Well, I think Greg alluded to that, he's building it for temporary, but also, Greg, you can probably speak better to this, but having the right concrete, so in case we do extend it out in there, then
Yeah,
be ready for that.
The idea was if we're going to make this investment to do it in a way that if you were to expand and your long-term plan were to end at, say, Newbrook on that site, the infrastructure we invested in is ready to do that. If you look in there too, I think we even put in a temporary cost or an additional potential cost of if you were to pave the whole lot, right? And then part of the permitting would be making sure that we would have in place everything for the 3-acre rule when that comes in 2034, I believe. I think it's 2034, you have to have a plan, 2037, you have to have it done, which says you have to treat your stormwater runoff if you're over 3 acres total. So at that point at Newbrook, you'd probably get pretty close to that on that site. That 3 acres of it might be impervious surface. So we've taken that into account too. So yeah, we're trying, to minimize the investment. What you don't want to do is put down a cheap pad and then end up tearing it up just to build another one there to build long term. That's not ideal. So
That's great.
Anybody know how long Floodbrook's had their temporary classrooms?
Great question.
Do you?
Forever?
before too.
That,
I reached out to the guys at Academy School, they had theirs, and he said that he believed they went in 06, they took them out in I think 2020, 2021, and he said when he started in 11, there hadn't been a lick of maintenance done to them at all. And there really wasn't a maintenance plan for them. And so, yeah, the hope is, right, when you have 2 buildings, you're continuing to do maintenance, right? And so we know hey, we want to preserve these and we want them to last. So, it would be part of our maintenance plan would be to upkeep them and to preserve them as long as we can. Like most things, right? They're going to stay going as long as you maintain them. So.
Emily? Oh, sorry. I thought
No, I was just saying that I have deep trauma over the Drew probably remembers this, but the modulars at Newbrook, which were water was pouring down the inside of the rooms when we tore them out. They were totally useless. It was awful. It was horrible. They were awful.
Glorified construction trailer.
And
Remember
thank,
to,
thank goodness we have Greg now.
Technology's got better.
And that too, yeah.
So,
Let's hope.
since you called on me, I'll just say one more thing. I just guess I think it's important to remind everybody that there were some proposals coming to the legislature by various segments, some from the legislature, some from the administration, that really would have made this even more difficult, honestly. And I think it's worth remembering that there was a proposal to artificially borrow money to buy down tax rates for next year, which the treasurer really panned because that would have hurt our bond ratings and everything else. So, you know, what we ended up with isn't by any means, and we never said it was ideal, but it did give us the opportunity to do what you know, we've been talking about here tonight, to take the time to talk about the education of our students first. What is it that we are trying to achieve, and to build on our public education system, not continue to bandage it and harm it, honestly. And so I know this is really tough, and I know this is not the best timing, but it frankly could have been a lot worse, I think. And so part of the challenge here is that we did actually, again, for I think maybe we were in the third year in a row, artificially buy down tax rates to the tune of something like 96 million, I think it ended up being. And that means we'll have to pay for that next year. So, and we've been doing that to try to make sure that Vermonters aren't having to pay any more than they are. I looked at a chart recently, and I think the Newfane and Townsend tax rates this year, based on our budget, went up 6%. I don't know the other towns because I haven't looked all of them. I represent those two, but what, you know, and the average in the state was 13.8%. So, you know, we did do what we could here. We should be happy that we were able to keep our budget as low as possible. And we've had great support in our financial department here and in our administration, trying to make sure that we're being very thoughtful about our spending. But that being said, our enrollment continues to decline and the costs go up. And healthcare is going to continue to be a problem, which is a whole other issue.
Indeed. All right. Here we are, folks. It was our pleasure for next steps.
I agree with Drew. We need to start putting out to the community something. Next month or October.
For that, sooner the better, because you're gonna have to warn public votes before you can't implement this plan until both towns have voted affirmatively to close their schools.
And that's gonna be difficult. At least for
Would administration be able to put together a slideshow presentation with a lot of the information that has been presented, such as these financials, if we came up with kind of bullet points of what we would like to be on there?
Administration can do whatever the board directs us to do. Within reason, of course.
I direct you to find a golden egg.
Within the bounds of the law.
by tomorrow.
Yeah, I think there was a couple of people who felt like they represented the board or even had some know-how with that sort of thing on the PR side, that we can work collaboratively to build something. We would need a timeline and a target audience and
Cool.
in the plan.
Let me ask, does anybody disagree with us presenting this to the towns and asking? Does anybody not agree with taking that step? I mean, they very well may come back and say, sorry, not gonna happen, but are we willing to make that effort to reach out?
So to me, it kind of feels like, this is not, so maybe the best way to move forward would be to start having some meetings in the towns, talk to people a whole lot more so that they're understanding where we're at and why we think this is the right solution. And pending how those conversations go, I don't imagine that we're going to get some sort of like, wait, I have the magic solution, right? It seems very unlikely that somebody is going to come up with a solution that's going to solve things better than this currently would. But I also don't think that we should say, okay, we've decided this is what we're doing and now we're coming to talk to you about it. I think that we need to go to the public and really actually say, this is what we think is the best solution and why. And I wanna hear everything that every single concern you have about this, and I wanna be able to address every one of those. I want you to say like, listen, the commute is too difficult and I'm not gonna be able to do it. And then I can, as a board member, can say, okay, it is an 8-minute drive and it's 8 minutes longer twice a day, and here's the impacts that creates, or 10-minute drive, whatever it is. Maybe it's closer for some people, but whatever the situation is, whatever the concerns are, I think that we as a board need to know what they are, be able to address them, and then we will know whether this is actually really the right solution. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, before we ask.
Right,
Yeah.
before we
Yeah.
say we would like to vote. I think we should everyone should be on the same page.
Okay, better frame, yeah? Go ahead, Emma.
I just have a couple of questions. We're talking about closing 2 schools essentially and consolidating. I guess my first question is, do we present this as a temporary solution to our communities when we go there? So I'm not really expecting anybody to answer that, but just saying we have to have that answer when we go out to our communities to do that. But I guess there's 2 other factors that I think we need to consider, and that is pre-K. One of the costs in here is, building a new playground for pre-K. Newburgh isn't set up for pre-K. Do we consider pre-K in one of the other buildings? And to reduce spending, I'm not trying to say that I don't know what happens to those buildings. I guess if we are presenting it, we're saying what we have to have an answer to what we're going to do with those buildings. This year, we're keeping Jamaica open just for pre-K this upcoming school year. Is that something that we would consider to, the balance? I don't know whether it would make more sense to do it. The other thing is, and I'm going to put Bob on the spot for a second here, and that is, we lease space for Wyndham Central. Is there a consideration where we might say, hey, Wyndham Central, you might want to consider leasing from the West River School District in one of the buildings where we're also keeping pre-K, and keep one of the schools open for both those topics. I'm just saying, I'm being thoughtful here about how we can reduce, how we can save. And so I think those questions, I bring them up now because they're probably going to come to us anyway. So those are other things, and they're just 2 that just popped into my head right here while we're sitting here having this conversation. So welcome any other thoughts too.
Let me answer the last one first. Yes, we are leasing a building that is for sale with a lease that expires in a year. Less than high quality facility. So we would be happy to consider that with the SU board. What was the first part of what you were talking about? Having. So what, as Lori said, that there's sort of there's a sliding scale on this to some degree, like the 12.5 cents or whatever it was. It's sort of like the everything's closed and there's nothing open. So if you leave one open and it has pre-K in it, then that's gonna reduce that savings. If you if you have one where your central office is also located in a pre-K, you're gonna gain some revenue, but you're also paying half that revenue as the biggest district. So like there's a certain level of, you know what I'm saying? So like, it's not a huge savings, but and then you gotta think about the long-term, the facilities assessments, the work that will still be needed if those are operating as well. So those are costs to consider. The one thing that I'll add to this conversation, which is, it's the invisible elephant in the room. Newbrook has not been tested for PCBs. It's Jamaica was clean, Townsend not tested yet either. Or Townsend didn't need to be tested maybe. But Newbrook has not, they were later on the list, and now we're in what the state calls a holding pattern. So we don't know what that means. Yeah, that's another variable to consider. It'd be great to get the testing pushed forward to find out what that is before we would move with the plan, because it certainly wouldn't be great to roll out a new plan and then have the testing done once the kids are there and find out that it's like, high. But is this because the state is now frozen money on this and there's no testing happening? But I don't know what the answer to that is. Maybe you only has some answers on that one too, but didn't think so.
Wish I did.
Yeah, I know. So, Greg and I can continue to kind of push a little bit, or maybe even, see if there's someone we can reach out to with this is the plan we're thinking about. But we're gonna save everybody money, the whole state's gonna be glad we're consolidating, but we need this testing done before we can move forward. Maybe that's enough of a carrot, who knows? But that's something that people should also be aware of as well.
That seems really important.
Yeah.
It's already, then have to tear it down.
Yeah.
Are we,
Go ahead, Kate.
how far are we from having a long-term plan? Because I think this is, I know we don't know and we don't know what the state's gonna do, but I think that's kind of the status quo in its own way. And it might be easier to think about this if it's if it works with our long-term plan. I think it's easier for us to get behind this, and not that we are selling it really, but we're telling our neighbors in our community why we're doing this and why we think this is the best option. And I don't know if that's a whole other enchilada, but if it fits into a vision of a long-term plan, I think it makes sense for us to think about, and it's easier to explain to our community how we're making the best choice for them with that context.
I agree completely. And I do think that one of the things that you guys have been exploring through long-term planning is you were looking for that long-term plan, and then how have led to this path of there isn't an easy answer, so we're looking for ways to try to meet some other needs. But we haven't really fully talked about the 50-year plan. And as stewards of the school district for kids, what's that look like? We know our buildings are aging. We know there's significant cost to do work on them. Greg got a thing recently from the Leland and Gray gym inspection, which I don't even want to talk about because it's got some stuff that's never been done for years. And at any rate, it's we're going to keep pouring money in. I think that point was made earlier. So in all the buildings. So yes, I think it'd be fantastic if the board created, I won't say a real long-term planning committee, but a longer term, I don't know what you want to call it, maybe a different name, but to think about develop a stewardship plan committee or something that would be looking at that so you can see where this fits into that. Because it really should be hand in glove in that, which is what you're saying. I couldn't agree more.
Maybe it helps us get there.
Correct.
It's kind of answered, it seems like since I've been on the board, this is an answer to a lot of questions that seem to have kept the board stuck.
Yeah.
Even if it's not the answer that we wanted, it's an answer that we have.
Until there's state construction aid, it's impossible. So a new building is gonna be, $40, $50 million or more, who knows? And when that bond payment goes against the penalty, there's just no possible way. So we can come up with a long-term plan. But until the legislature figures out what it's gonna do with buildings for schools, we're really just wasting our time. This is in my opinion, because we know we can't afford the bond payment.
But, and this is just thinking out loud while we're on this, but like if this pointed us towards a, maybe not 100-year plan, but like a few generations long-term plan that was, just say, conversation's sake, like 2 campuses, and we were thinking about that, and I know that's not exactly where the board has gone, but if this helps us move that way, and maybe school funding will change, and maybe it will change this year or next, but that that seems, maybe Emily will tell us otherwise, but that seems not that much, you know, closer than a wing and a prayer from, you know, maybe I'm exaggerating, but.
Yeah, I would just say Drew's right. I mean, without knowing the direction that the legislature and the state is going to go with the long-term plan, frankly, of public education, because that's exactly what we're doing. When we have a commission called the Commission on the Future of Public Education, I think it's really important that we, doesn't mean we can't go into long-term planning about what our needs are, but to execute it, because this plan is going on at the state level, and because there will be changes to the education funding system. I don't know what they're going to look like. I really don't. But we're not going to go backward. My guess is we'll never go back to the foundation formula that we used to have, because that wouldn't be constitutional. So we know there's going to be a new education funding formula. Will it look a lot like what it is now? I have no idea. But it's going to take a couple of years for us to really implement that. And I think Bob's point about the PCB testing, we need to get that. We need to get that number. We need to get those numbers. We need to at least call them and say, is there any way we're in the cusp of talking about doing something here? And why would we do it if we don't know the status of the PCBs in one of our buildings that we're talking about doing? So there, you know, as much as I would love to see us move as fast as we could forward to make everybody feel better about a temporary solution, I think we need to be really thoughtful, because I don't want to go answering taxpayers' questions without, you know, knowing what those answers are. We can't answer that about PCBs, right? That's news to me. I thought all our schools were tested. I'm surprised to hear that.
So Greg's on that. Just text me. He's sending. He's already there. He's sent the email already, right, Greg?
Okay.
Yeah, I emailed Eben and just asked him basically point blank, like, hey, my district is thinking about trying to do this. However, the school is one that hasn't been tested, and you know, I would like to formally request that somebody up there find the money to get this building tested so that our district can try to plan to move forward. I was also just thinking that most schools in the first round of their testing, the testing was between like 20 and 30 grand. The question is, would we take some of our surplus money and protect ourselves in hopes that maybe in a year when it came up, we could say, hey, we paid for this ourselves. Can we get reimbursed now? But so that we can know to move forward. I don't know, Emily, if you think that's something that would ever be there. I'm sure most schools aren't thinking this way, because at this point, nobody actually wants to know the answers, because for the most part, it hasn't been ideal for people. But I think in our case, we kind of need to know. But
We need to know.
just a thought.
And the point to that too, that I don't know if this got shared with all the boards or just the chairs. I forget who I sent it to, but there was a communication we got from the state. It was a whole board. Okay, so you guys have seen that where it's basically like, yeah, they haven't even reimbursed us for money that they told us they would earlier. So like to Greg's point, like spending more money is maybe, I don't know if it's the right move or not, I don't know, but like they would pay us back the first round anyway, so it's not like it's too outlandish for us to throw some more money on it.
Yeah, I'd say 20,000 versus $650,000. That's pretty easy.
A small investment for a large, yeah. And the only other thing I'll throw out there from my perspective on all of this, as you guys are going to figure out where you want to go or what the next steps are, soon, we still need to figure out what the following school year will look like at JVS, regardless of this.
Yeah.
So if the PCB testing is going to get stalled and we're kicking this down the road a year and we're trying to figure out if we're going to be buying down the tax rate temporary or we're going to be making cuts, whatever we develop the budget season for next year, the current JVS operation is just for this current school year. So you will need to address that in some manner, either reopen it or put it to the Jamaica voters. That's where you're at with that one. So the sooner you know that answer, the sooner you can develop a budget, right? And maybe that will help lead you thinking about how, because if they vote no, you know, then then where are you with even thinking about Townsend? So, which is getting ahead of ourselves from this whole plan, but like that has, the Jamaica question has to be resolved. So.
So I guess one other thing I just, having been a part of long-term planning committees forever and ever now, it seems like every single time this conversation has come up, and every single time it's been difficult, and the pipe dream of, well, it would be amazing if we could just build one new beautiful school, and everybody seems to be all the way on board with that that is an amazing pipe dream that immediately gets shut down because we can't afford it. That being said, if we're going to talk about what our pipe dream for the future is, it seems to be, over and over again, it seems to be that it is one new building that is all of the things we need it to be, designed in a way that everybody can coexist in a better way than we currently do. And I think that this particular short-term step certainly isn't going to get us there. It does help our current situation. I mean, we're talking about, you know, $1 million a year plus another 4.5 over 20 years. So in 20 years, that's an awful lot of millions. And it's not going to solve our problem. It's not going to build us a new building, but it's closer to what we need it to be.
Well said. And I think the fact of the matter too is that Newburgh is not the geographic center.
Yeah.
It is Townsend. Yeah, I agree. I don't think this stops us from starting that process, right? But to Drew's point, until there's some support, some aid, it's incredibly difficult. All right.
I'll just one last
Go
thing.
ahead.
I'll just say the December report, or I think it's December, or is it January? I can't remember. The report that's coming out will, I think, it's hard to say what it'll be, but there's high expectations for the Commission on Public Education to come out with a preliminary report that will help us in our future planning. That's what I would hope for sure, you know, and that's not actually that far off. I worry about it because it isn't that far off. I don't know how, you know, what it's going to look like. It's not the final report, but it might make sense to make sure that we are paying close watch on what's happening there to get a good sense of that while we're moving forward.
And the timing of that, Emily, is my understanding is that to inform the legislative session as well as potentially budget implications?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And we're not going to know about any changes to the education funding system until we're back in session and actually start digging deep into that as well, because that's happening at the same time. So,
Emily, just to be clear, so in December/January, there would be implications for FY26 or just initial findings?
I wouldn't go so far as to say anything beyond initial findings. I just don't, you know, they're working hard, and I don't know how many meetings they're holding, but you know, this report is supposed to give us their preliminaries on what the future is going to be. So,
Because it's coming
I'll
out
just
prior
go
to the
out.
legislative session, that's the part that's, the timing of it is intentional. So that the legislature decides they want to act on some of the early ideas, that session, it could happen. Now, will that impact?
Too late for our budget.
Well, it wasn't this year. I mean, it was, but it wasn't. They still made changes, right? So that's what I'm saying, like.
Well, it's too late for our budget.
Too late for our budget, but changes were still made, so, you know, you just don't know what could happen on that, right?
no,
So would it be reasonable to task our administration with putting together all of the things that we have talked about and all of the information that led us up to this in a way that can be presented to the public, bring it to us at maybe a special meeting, maybe we don't wait a whole month to get that back?
We do have the start of school, so I.
Yeah,
What are you
as I say
thinking
that.
about? Depends what you're thinking about, like, what are you asking for?
Probably just a road-ready presentation.
Yeah.
We need to start having conversations with people.
Something that we can bring to the public ASAP.
With, look, we're talking,
I want to present, here's my, feel free, I'm not speaking for everybody, but
Right.
my thought is, basically, here's the problem. We can't afford any of this. It's only getting worse. Everyone panic, okay? Here's a possible solution. Here's a possible solution. We know it's not perfect, but here's the things it's solving. Here's the things that are getting better. Here's the things that are a little worse. Yeah.
So just to clarify, because I heard you say everything up to this point.
Right.
So you don't mean back to 2018?
Oh yeah, we have to summarize every meeting. The good thing is you like same as the last.
So I just wanted to make sure that that's not what your intention was. You're just talking about, this is the problem, state the problem.
Yeah.
This is a possible solution.
Here are the pros. We have
and
been
cons.
working on this for, like, very actively for 6 years.
Ever since.
More than that. More than that. Like, very, very actively. We've had so many meetings and committees and facilitators and you name it. We've talked to the public in every way we can imagine. It has been a very long process. We have reached go time.
yeah, so I'm happy to play a role in this. Here's my nervousness, it is the start of the school year, we have induction, we have teachers starting, we have PD, when we have the school year starting. And your September meeting is the, that should be on the agenda here. September 9th, so if you're talking about doing something prior to that,
It's like the earliest.
you're talking end of August, right? So, which just seems a little tight, but what I would say is regardless of when you wanna do something by, even if it's the 9th, which just still feels tight. If there could be one or two board members sort of volunteered into co-building this with me. I mean, we're gonna need these guys to help with some stuff, but I mean, I think we have the information. It's just a matter of putting it together, storyboarding it, and coming up with how does this play out. I would be happy to set up some regular weekly meetings with a small contingent of board members to work on that with someone who's decent with technology, who, you know, could help do that. I mean, creating a slideshow that's gonna be selling something for the whole community, like, I don't wanna, I just know how the 2018 was. It was the administration's presentation. And so I just wanna make sure this is a board presentation. It's supported by the administration in the, what the conclusions are, if you know what I'm saying.
It's like the first scapegoat.
Well, would you nominate yourself?
14 plans that I did, financials.
Yeah.
Does anybody
I
agree
think
with that?
it's a shared thing. I just think we need to share it though. I think that's an important distinction. You guys are the ones who have been doing this work for years.
It needs to
All
be
right,
your
so
words,
Lindsay and
not-
who are the other two?
I think even one other person, I don't even think it needs to be a huge group, but if there's someone else that
3 people?
has some flexibility for daytime scheduling.
Peter's in.
Yeah.
Lindsay?
I'm gonna be an idea person. How about that? I'm not a big
I mean, she doesn't come to meetings, she just sends a lot of emails.
All right, well, I can reach out to you guys and set up some sessions, we can start storyboarding and talking about what the flow would look like, and then start to build something.
Did anybody else have a burning desire to do that? I don't wanna stop anybody from.
I have a pretty desire to have dates on a calendar for public
Yes.
meetings.
Fair. And do we wanna put a date, do we wanna have a meeting keep it in September for the board to see that presentation? Or, yes?
Yeah, given the start of the year, yeah.
So when is our budget timeline? Because really, we have to work back from there.
Right.
Well, apparently it's April, so.
Yeah.
Right, because this has a huge effect on our budget for next year, which means we have to have town votes, which means we have to have public meetings, warnings, so
Yeah.
if we've gotta kind of figure out that, when is the last day that we can have the vote and still be able to get our budget discussion? We have to vote by November, right?
We start.
To adopt a budget?
No, we have to vote to close the schools
Oh,
by November in order for us to know that, so that we can write a budget for next year.
Yeah,
Or is that not the right?
because we start building in November, budgets.
Right,
Yeah.
usually done by the end of December-ish, January.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, you're usually approving it in January.
so
I
if
have
we
that
need to have
document somewhere.
Warren town votes by, well, and we have to have the, 30-day appeal after that, right? So they vote and they get another 30 days, so now we're back to October 1st.
Yeah.
That we have to have.
I think what you're getting at is, yeah, so by our next meeting, we should have that
This is-
timeline all
Yeah,
drawn out of.
it is pretty quick, it's happening in the next 90
Real
days.
fast.
Oh, it always happens faster than you.
And we
Yeah.
need that PCB information.
Yes.
And can I
Go ahead.
just ask, I did just go look the dates up for when the reports are supposed to be due, and December 15th, 2024 is when the preliminary findings and recommendations are due on the commission's work right now. And then it's a year later that the final findings and recommendations are due on December 1st, 2025. And then the proposed legislation to advance any recommendations for education funding system is due on or before December 15th, 2025. So we're talking, not, 15 months essentially here. And so I just want to keep that, I want us to keep that in mind as we're talking about moving forward with putting out a proposal to our communities when we don't really even know what that December 15th, 2024 preliminary recommendations is going to look like. I just can't even begin to guess what it might be. I know I've heard talk about, reducing the number of supervisory unions in the state significantly. That might change everything for us if something like that came up. I don't know if that's even come up at the commission level, but I'm just saying that's just something that I've heard people talking about. They will be looking at ways to reduce, improve educational opportunities and reduce costs. So the timeline, frankly, that Drew talked about and others have talked about is we need to decide what that is, what that looks like.
If we don't meet that timeline, then we've decided that we're doing nothing for another year. And that we're gonna have to buy down the tax rate with our reserves.
Potentially.
That's the decision.
And I think what you're just looking for is, what is the timeline, right? If we were to advance with that, we do need to know that, how quickly would we have to, but keeping in mind that December 15th, we might have more information.
You had your first draft presented on, in December last year, and approved it in February.
So we would know theoretically by December if there was an imminent change coming. Maybe. We might know by December if there was an imminent change coming.
Legislature just change it in the middle of the year, like they did
Fair.
this year,
Fair.
without telling.
My thought is that if we got to December and all of a sudden found out, just kidding, we're consolidating SUs and everything's gonna be different December wouldn't be too late to say, whoa, everything just changed. We can plan for where we are.
You still have to vote for the town bill.
There's a time, and an immediate time frame that we have to meet if we are to move forward. If something changes, because that's the question, will something change come December? Maybe, maybe not.
Those are
Right.
preliminary findings in December. It's a year out before you'd ever hear what those recommendations, final recommendations would be.
So say we go forward and we ask permission from the towns to close the schools. We're not obligated to close the schools at that point though, right? We could still change our mind on that point?
That's sort of what I was getting at, is
Yeah.
if something changed in
That's a
December,
very
we could.
good question.
Depends how you word the ballot, I suppose, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That is a great.
In case the state comes in and shoots everything, it's the state's fault, not ours.
We'll put that right in the ballot.
This is a hard question to ask, but what could we learn in December that would make us decide to keep all the schools open, like in light of this information? I mean, just like as we think about what we're really dealing with.
They're not gonna encourage.
No, I mean, just
Yeah,
for
it's
our
the-
sake, what would we, like, what would change, what would we learn in December that would change this short-term sort of
Getting rid of the
approach?
penalty and gonna have school construction aid to do a long-term.
But even that would just be like a recommendation or a thought. Nothing would be
Yeah.
finalized until the legislature acted on it. So you wouldn't really know, you would know what the initial,
What the potential.
I am
Potential.
just listening.
If the early findings are that we need school construction aid to consolidate these districts into, then it may make sense for us to spend the money for a year, knowing that they're gonna be passing legislation. But at the same time, I've spent a lot of time in Montpelier, and it is unlikely they're gonna do anything helpful. Especially around education funding,
Yeah.
because we have yet to see them do anything to help us.
It's also unlikely that if changes are implemented, that they're implemented fast and immediate. It will be likely something that rolls out over several years, as we've seen every time,
And help Burlington.
and we will still be in a very similar situation.
Yeah,
Okay.
I wanna stress again, please, that the report on December 15th is for preliminary findings and recommendations. It is not, I cannot imagine them coming out with some significant changes to the education delivery system, over a couple of months here. Not to say that there hasn't been a ton of work done prior to this, but I just don't, who the heck knows? I mean, has anybody gone to any of their meetings? Because I haven't even done that yet. And I don't know how many.
What's the
I think
first
they've
one?
held 3.
there wasn't a lot of substance at the first
Well,
one.
come November, they could get all voted out anyway, and we could get new legislators, and maybe it'd be all different.
It's made up of a lot of different.
It's
we
not
have a
gonna
mess,
change.
so-
It doesn't matter who the people are. The problem is what we're trying to deal with, right?
Yeah.
And so the
All right.
problem isn't gonna go away with the election.
So it sounds like action steps.
Yes.
I have myself a committee, I've already invited another 2 meetings.
Nice.
So, looking forward to that. Lindsay's got the donuts, Peter, hot chocolate for me, thanks. And we'll buy that, so I have 2 meetings prior to that 9th board meeting. The second one is that morning. So hopefully we'll have something polished to be able to show you at that point,
Perfect.
so.
And we'll have like a timeline cut off
Right.
dates for.
But that doesn't answer Drew's question, but should we really be thinking about scheduling some of these
Yes,
things now
yes.
in people's calendars? Are we talking about doing them as special meetings? Is it 1 in each community, all 3, 4? Like how many, where are we doing
We
this?
should do them at the open house. Every school has an open house with all the families, right? Or
Oh,
usually.
that's a deep
No.
down. The first day of school.
Yeah. It's a way to get.
It's too much all at
Why
once.
don't you
for
just do
families.
them the next week, September, whatever that next week is, the next week and the next week. Right through September.
So where do you want to present?
Each of the schools.
All 4 towns, each of the schools that are potentially being suggested? Like we're talking 2, we're talking 4, like what do you?
How about all of them?
I would say
What is all? Are we talking
3 elementary schools.
the 3 element? So
3.
3.
Yeah.
Because even it'll affect the Newfane Brookline,
Well, it affects those kids and.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure.
so. Yeah, and the taxpayers will wanna be there too, ones with kids, ones without.
So one each week?
16,
After-
23 to 30.
Yeah. Mondays.
All right, so you're talking the 16th, the 23rd, and the 30th, roughly.
Yep.
So I don't know if you're hoping for me to be present at these. My guess is perhaps so. Well, the 16th I have a River Valleys meeting, the other two I have no meetings as of right now. So,
What's the, after the 30th, what's the Monday after that? The 6th?
October 7th. That is another River Valleys meeting.
They're not that important.
They do first and third, so.
Do we just wanna move it from
It
a
doesn't have to be
Monday?
a Monday.
Yeah, why don't we just
It doesn't have to be Monday,
Pick a
correct? It
different
could be, but that's just where I'm at. So if we did, if you want to keep it consistent on Mondays, but except for that one, which was
we could do Wednesdays?
Would be the Wednesday after the
the
30th.
16th, we could do it
Wednesdays are
on
fine.
that Tuesday, the 17th.
Tuesday 17th?
So if you did Tuesday, the 17th, Monday, the 23rd, and Monday, the 30th.
7 o'clock, we're thinking?
And does it matter which location is which you wanna?
Make the Jamaica one, cause I'm gone the 30th.
We want you at that one, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
So not JBS on the 30th.
yeah, if you can do that, if it's okay with anybody, everybody.
So
You might want to
JBS
start at
17, 23, 30.
Do you want to Jamaica, Townsend, Newbrook in that order?
Yeah, makes sense.
I can't do the 17th, because it's at the Jamaica meeting.
So
Alright, so Jamaica
Townsend,
meeting.
Jamaica, Newbrook?
Mhm.
So Townsend on the 17th, JBS on the 23rd, Newbrook on the 30th.
Okay,
All at 7 PM, you said?
Yeah,
I think that makes sense, yeah.
give everybody time to
These
eat.
are public forums, entertain, presentation, take questions and answers, and get feedback.
Yep.
Okay. You and I can talk about what that agenda would actually look like, but yeah, we can craft that. And that does give us from the 9th to the 17th, which is a week, to have you guys be like, yeah, because if you're the 9th, you're like, yeah, that's a terrible presentation. It's gonna be a tight turnaround the 17th. So we'll do our best to get something that's high quality.
Well, alright, is that not enough of a window? Like, do
I mean,
we wanna
it-
push the 17th?
I think you
one?
guys are right in the timeline. I think it's what you have to do. Get you done before October.
Okay.
We could move the 17th like later in that week, like a Wednesday or Thursday, if a few more days of,
Thursday is Marlboro.
Yeah, I could do Wednesday.
That's only if the presentation stays.
well, there's going to be edits no matter what, right? I mean, I'm sure that the board will be like, well, if we could tweak this thing,
The
right?
tweaks take a day.
So we could do the 18th instead of the 17th.
It's one day
18th,
difference.
alright.
Guys have other things on their plates too.
It's the other two.
Anybody have an issue with 18th?
What are you doing?
What I'm doing both days. So Wednesday, the 18th
Trying to use one crease.
is Townsend.
Yep,
Okay.
18, 23, 30. Everybody good with that?
We did that once.
The 30th is my birthday. I expect you all to sing happy
We'll bring
birthday and bring cake.
Yeah, you got it.
I
Peter,
like chocolate.
Peter, cake.
Alright,
All right.
we good?
Say yes to my invites, Lindsay. You're good to go.
Okay. We have town dates, we have dates for your meetings, presentation. I think we're good. Okay.
No, wait, should we look at what town select board meeting dates are so that we aren't doing it on the same day as a town select board day? Because the town
got
people
in
like
trouble
to
for that,
yell
too.
at us about it, yeah, we should think about that, we got in trouble once.
Tuesday is fifth of Monday.
Jamaica's as second and
So
fourth.
maybe we aren't doing the 23rd and 30th because we don't wanna.
23rd is.
Or the 30th is Newbrook, right? Or is Newfane?
Newfane does the first, I think it's the first and third.
Okay, and we're fine, then that would be.
And that would be
the fourth.
okay.
Dana, what'd you say about
I
Jamaica?
think it could be the first and third, or the first,
I'll double
second,
check it on
fourth.
that.
Is it usually at 7 or is it at 6?
It's 7.
You could potentially move up the time and they could attend and then go to their own meeting.
Good thinking.
Okay, so
So if it's the same night, like a 5,
just make it early.
Yeah.
5 o'clock, 5:30 start?
Okay. All right,
Newfane's the first and third.
we're good.
Ish.
Move on to, yeah, as good as we can be. NEASC update.
Oh, we're still way up there on the agenda.
We're at the 7:20 mark.
Yeah. We get a lot to do in 23 minutes.
Yeah, so the NEASC update is just, I mean, there's nothing new over the summer on that, but we do have the visiting, the collaborative committee is coming. Good alliteration there, in October. Is that right, Dana? Is that something right?
Say it again?
October, the collaborative committee visit for NEASC.
Oh,
was it
I don't know
September?
offhand. I know there's one early.
It's in the
though.
first 2
November.
months, I forget which one it is, but anyway, that's happening, and we have our chairs that are working on getting that organized logistically, because we have to put up people in hotels and food and all that kind of stuff, so there's some logistics around that. But we have submitted our initial self-report, and, yeah, we'll see what happens when they come visit, so,
November 1st.
just before that. was out.
November 1st.
Mm.
All right, next we are on to Greg, PCB update and project updates. And before you start, Greg, I just want to say, unbelievable what you folks have done this summer. And if you haven't seen the fields, and I'll let you talk all about it, but it's just, you guys blow us away. Really appreciate it.
Well, thanks. We'll start with the downer, I think, of the PCB stuff, as Bob had stated earlier, in a communication with Evan Pendleton from the state. He basically said, due to the lack of funding, we're pretty much all left in a holding pattern, which isn't really a big deal. Townsend basically didn't have to be tested because the original building was older than PCBs and the newer building is newer than PCBs. So they kind of got off the hook. Leland and Gray, Newbrook or JVS was a clean bill of health as far as PCBs went. And Leland and Gray, we just found a little bit in the water tank room, which we believe is the, well, we're pretty sure, we're 95% sure that it's the oil that was coming out of the old compressor that is no longer in use. So now it's just going to be a matter of getting it removed and getting the work plan in place, and then getting that done, which hopefully will happen when the state does come up with some funding. At that point, we would take that on. So there's the bummer of it all. The good news is, yeah, we started the summer out doing the work for the stormwater project, getting that all done and getting the permitting for Leland and Gray. And while we were doing that, we leveled out the lower soccer field, had it hydro seeded. We've been watering that a few hours a day to try to get that to grow as quick as we can. Tammy Clausen was great, and she stepped up and kind of cut a deal with Jamaica to use that field at the end of 30 and 100 to try to keep some of the pressure off that, to give that grass time to get in. Really excited about that. When we staked it out, there were areas that were over 6 inches of dips in across the field, and there were a bunch of areas that were kind of dangerous as far as the way in which you can like twist an ankle. It was lumpy, and so it's exciting to feel like we can do that and have the time for that grass to come in. I'll start quickly. I'll try to go quick for y'all, but not too fast. Newbrook, new swing set, 5th grade classroom, had asbestos removal paint, new flooring installed. Pat was also able to, they got the gym floor taken right down, which hasn't been done in a long time because summer school used to always be there. So the place is looking really great. They also painted the nurses' room and the kindergarten classroom this summer. He cranked it out down there. Townsend, the new pre-K playground. Well, the new playground is installed, and the whole playground is usable for ages 2 to 12, which is super exciting. There's a cool spinner back there, 3 bays of swings, a new structure. It really looks good. We just got to get the rest of the mulch put around there. Excited about that. They had 2 classrooms that got new flooring. 3 classrooms have been painted. The last door in the building that I overlooked originally will get a badging set up. We'll get badged, so it'd be easier for folks to use. The ERV project that we got, I believe, was $250,000 or $225,000 from the state, from Efficiency Vermont on. That's cranking right along. One of the units in the main hallway that we moved to the nurses' room is in, and we're just getting ready they're going to insulate it tomorrow. We're going to, hopefully by the end of the week, be putting the ceiling back together in there. The ERV and the kitchen closet and the one of the pre-K closets they're in. They're just finishing up ductwork. The plumber will be there tomorrow to plumb a couple of lines in. So all in all, that's been really exciting. Townsend and Newbrook will be getting a new phone and PA system. They'll have outside speakers, inside speakers, speakers in bathrooms. It'll be a new IP-based phone system, which is basically it's an internet phone system. Really excited about it. We went with first choice on it. It's a really cool setup. The admin assistants will have really versatile phones. I mean, you'll be able to have an admin assistant standing out front doing bus duty and they won't miss a phone call. The phone that they'll have, it's basically like a cordless phone, but they can direct calls from it. It's really slick. It's a nice system. We're excited about that. Leland and Gray, the center room, all the rooms in the center of A level have had new paint, new flooring, which I think is 5 or 6 rooms. Oh, and new ceilings, and the lighting had already been done. The activity room, for those of you that ever get down in there, super, super beautiful. That got all new flooring. We kind of outlined it in green with a big giant white center and the L&G in the flooring. It's beautiful. It looks really, really good. If you all get a chance on your way out, it looks like you're in the library there. Drop down to sea level and check it out.
No, don't do that, Greg, because the sea level lobby looks like it's just been waxed and buffed.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
It's all
I don't
blocked
know where
off.
they're at.
I was gonna, but they saw those barriers.
They shut you down? Okay, no problem. We had the water tank room. We took the asbestos insulation around the water tanks and the old hot water heater that was left in there. We got that removed. And we're meeting tomorrow morning with them to look at getting the new tanks plumbed in. The end of the month, the big pump system will work. I'm really hoping to be able to get the new tanks set up and ready to go so that when we can basically just do like a disconnect, reconnect, and then we can deal with getting the other tanks cut up and removed. So excited about really making some headway on that. I know Lori's happy about that. We're paying for that with some old bond funding. Let's see. And then just, I mean, in general, like things went really well with the summer learning program and the folks at Leland and Gray, whether it was the kitchen staff really stepping up and doing, because they're doing the summer groceries program, but those same people that are doing that program during the summer or the summer camp program, they were cooking breakfast at 6:30 in the morning for those kids and serving to them and making lunches every day on top of then in between jumping out and filling bags and stuff for that. Their Thursdays were just grueling days because they'd be in at 6 in the morning getting ready for breakfast, but they were serving, they were dropping bags off until 5:30 or 6 at night. So really thankful for the kitchen staff and all the work that they put in. And as you can tell, I mean, it's hard not to want to praise the custodial staffs. They've all done a really, really phenomenal job. I've been really happy with them and the effort that guys have been willing to give and their willingness to, to go above and beyond for their communities and for their staffs and their kids. So it's all in all, it's been a really great summer. As far as the central office, we got some things cleaned up there, an office painted, a bathroom painted, trying to get a couple more done here before we get done. But so we cleaned up the basement with a lot of storage there with some support from Lori and her folks, just kind of marking boxes and whatever so that we could thin some things out. There's a lot down there that have been there a long time, so we're trying to make things a little nicer around there when we can. So it's yeah, as usual, it's been a busy and exciting and fun summer.
So he's not gonna toot his own horn, so let me toot his a little bit for you guys. The work, I came in at like 8 o'clock on a regular weekday, and the dumpster, which had been delivered the afternoon before, was full at 8 in the morning, because he had been here since like 6 in the morning, hauling stuff out of the basement of central office. Additionally, these are just a couple examples. Additionally, he spent time in River Valleys doing some stripping of floors on a Sunday with some staff. So like he's incredibly committed and hardworking, and we're ridiculously lucky to have his efforts to get the buildings ready. And he said they'll be ready, or he's gonna die trying. So I hope he doesn't do that. But he'll applaud his people, and I just want to applaud him. So you guys know they're doing that by seeing the leader in action in front of them. So
Thank you, Greg.
How did we do with the, I know we put some money towards school crisis. I know you talked about badging. Did we get some of that school crisis stuff ready for fall?
Yep. So yeah, we're ready to go on that. The main training is going to be the 2 days, the Monday and Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Just staff at the end of the school year were a little leery about like when we would roll things out and do it. So the main Alice training is going to be the Monday, Tuesday of Thanksgiving break. And at that point, we'll really dive into like making everything available to all the teachers so that they have it. There's some really great materials there. As far as the projects, I mean, yeah, the PA system, the phones, the badging at Townsend. We did some emergency light stuff, or yeah, some EM lights at Leland and Gray. So we, unbeknownst to us, in the first 2 years of the lighting projects at Leland and Gray, the emergency lighting on A and B was actually hallway lights that had these battery packs on them, and we didn't even know that they were there, and the other electrician must not have picked up on it either. I don't think it was anyone's fault. We didn't know. We never knew where the emergency lights were, really. Mike and I had no idea. So the King's Electric guys were like, hey, we can't take these 4 lights out because they have these battery packs on them on the D-level hallway when we were doing the lighting down there. And we were like, what do you mean? So we ended up buying the lighting packs to do them there. And we said, hey, well, we obviously need them up there. So they freed up 2 guys who stayed for, I think it was about a week, and they did A, B, C, and D for us. So we have all functioning emergency lights in there. So that was one of the things we afforded with that. So we're getting there.
All right, thanks. Any other questions? Thank you so much, Greg and team. It is a team effort for sure. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And to add on to the PCB thing, so I sent this out. I think this was just to the chair, so I'm crafting an email from all the districts who spent money on the PCB testing. There might any remediation yet, but on the testing that has yet to be refunded, which we'll be sending out to a variety of people. And so Marlboro, River Valleys, and West River are the 3 districts that are represented in that. So just so you guys know, that we'll be sharing something, and we'll have Val co-sign with me and the other board chairs. So I'll give you a copy when it's done.
All right, sounds good. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of June 10th, 2024.
Make a motion to accept the minutes of June 10, 2024.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Nope.
Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you. Correspondence. We have for correspondence, Bob.
We have the 2 requests for tuition. I think that's
Okay.
probably it.
Great, we'll get to that. Financials.
Do you want to read them? They're long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'll make a motion to approve pay orders 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 87, and 88. The individual amounts are in the package. The grand total is $1,867,200.03.
I second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, on to, I can't see who we have out there. We've got, who do we have out there?
Sam.
My glasses.
Just got it.
Scotty's up.
Oh, Scotty out there? Yeah. All right, we'll start with you, Scotty.
Hey, everybody. We didn't formally produce a report for this meeting, but I do want to just give, if I'm going to take a little bit of time, I'd like to say some thanks. First of all, I know we've already heard it, but Greg and his team were incredible this summer. Pat Mace has my building with Tim Pratt, has my building looking better than it's ever looked this early. And I'm really just so happy about it. We've got some rooms painted that weren't even supposed to get painted. We have a new swing set out on the playground for the kids, and we really look great. Even our kindergarten classroom got painted. I'm just really excited about it. I want to say thanks to our leadership team and Bob Tebow. We just came back from our time away, and we did a lot of planning and a lot of professional learning together up at Essex, and it was really an amazing retreat. I learned a lot, and I really got to know our new hires, which Randy and Francesca are amazing people, and I'm just really excited to be working with these guys. And it really says a lot about us. I know we've got a lot of financial problems. I mean, there's no question, but we are an attractive place to work, and the way I know that is because people like Randy are applying for jobs here. So I just wanted to say that. I also wanted to just quickly say that I went up for 3 days to the Shelburne Teaching Farm this summer to do some training and some planning with our farm to school team, which is a district-wide team. This is really important to the families that I serve, and I'm really excited about the work we're doing with Food Connects. I sent a letter out to my staffs today with all the dates coming up, but really I'm just excited that Natalie Beckstrom and Stacy Abbott and Monica Sullivan are joining my team. Again, I mean, we're attracting great people, and that's really a test of who we are. One last thing is that I want to thank Jen McCusick and her team. Our professional learning that we've put on this summer around Bridges Math, which is, again, just for people who are just now joining us, and around EL Education, which is our new curriculum, which is truly an amazing, well-balanced ELA curriculum. It's all just going together really nicely. Our teachers are really enjoying it from what I understand. And I'm very thankful to our central office for doing those things for our staff as we get ready for our students. I toured a new kindergartner today in my building who was adorable. And I'm really just super excited to get started and meet our new families and our new students. And I look forward to working with you guys and trying to help in any way I can to figure out what we're doing next. We really are serving incredible people in an incredible place. And I agree with Drew that we've been trying to figure out what to do next for a long time. And I just am really excited about what we can do to make change and how that'll impact the taxpayers and our students in terms of equity. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Scotty. Dana?
Yeah. So we have our benchmark testing is getting scheduled out. The high school will be using Star 360 this year to monitor our high school students around math and their ELA skills. As far as personalized learning goes, project-based learning is going to continue to evolve. Committee's being really brave. They're really impacting some shifts. People are leaning to have it included in classrooms more often, but also trying to shift this, if you will, the structure of how students engage in it. It's going to be different. but I want to be supportive that they have the time to figure it out to do what's right and to really have a more immersive engagement. The Personalized Learning Portfolio Committee they did a lot of work in the spring and even through the summer communicated, and for me, it's probably the most critical element that we roll out in our school and that we do it correctly. I'm trying to give them space, but also I want them to go slowly so that our implementation makes sense to parents, students, and the staff, so that we don't overload and have something that frustrates people and they try to back out of it. So there's a lot going on with personalized learning. High quality staffing, we're finally fully hired. And you have a slate of people on board there, and I'm excited. It's exciting to be fully staffed. It took a while this summer, and it is what it is, but I'm glad that we're fully staffed, and I'm really pleased with the people that we got to come on board. Under Safe Healthy Schools, the high school teachers are going to start to implement advisory practices. I know they've worked around it before, but again, we're going to ease into it and we're going to stay at it and we're not going to back out of it, but we're going to try to start off slow, be successful, get the students and parents in support of it and keep growing. In the springtime, I think I mentioned this before, the data that came out of the Panorama surveys through middle school and high school, the thing that stood out the most is that both groups of students are not happy. That's concerning. And it wasn't about being in school, it was home, school, anywhere. And it breaks my heart. Our kids just aren't happy. They're isolated. So hopefully Advisory is going to start a conversation and get them on board, and we can start helping them to develop good friendships and enjoy life and school. Met with Sarah the other week. We're going to try to get our pack up and going again, and Thursday night I'm going to be scooping out ice cream to parents. But I'm only trading for surveys that a checklist that kids, I'll give them ice cream any day, but the parents need to do a little survey for me and have some clipboards and pencils and just start taking. I need to know what people want, and when do they want to talk, when do they want to meet, what do they want to work on, and see if we can build up a vibrant parental involvement aspect at Leland Gray. Budgets are as expected, calendar dates, too many edges left it blank. So yeah, it's that time of year. There's a lot going on, but I am excited. I think we're gonna have a great school year, and there's a lot, but I think it's gonna be a good school year, really.
Thanks, Dana. Yeah, I'll take Moose Tracks.
Only have 2 flavors. Moose Tracks isn't one of them, but you can still come.
I know in the past there's been conversations, I believe Bob at one point had a committee going about block scheduling versus maybe something else. And is that still a conversation that's being had? Where is that at?
But the staff have not been engaged with it yet. But my plan is through the opening days to give them like parameters. I want it to be balanced. Jesse and I have talked about it. And you can probably get the history from Bob too. I know there are teachers that have seen every single style, and some were like, yeah, whatever you want to do. But I have 3 very specific goals. Everything is a cost. We have limited resources, so if you take water from here to put there, so there's a cost. But there are 3 priorities that I would like to see that we could shift, and I'm gonna set the priorities clear and get the teachers on board and see if they wanna check out other schools. I know, it's a Twin Valley, I think just left block scheduling. I've reached out to them. haven't heard back yet. But what I would like for them to do is to work out a proposal and then maybe work with the PAC around it and see what they think. I also want to involve students, student council, see what they think. I mean, I don't need to take a whole lot of time, but I know I've heard students say they would like shorter classes at the high school. It's too long, 90 minutes, but knowing, like, every teacher's different. Some are gonna be like, yeah, fine, no problem. Others will be like, wait, what? I just lost 30 minutes a day. You know, it's like, so we've gotta make sure people have enough time to think about it, but I want them to process through choices and options of how to do it. And see what we can do to make sure some of our learning and skill practice goes through the whole year, not just a semester. So.
I look forward to hearing more about that conversation.
So the third rail of high school. Master schedule.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I was gonna say, before you go to Randy, let me just do a little introduction, because
Yeah.
we should have done that probably at the top of the
Yeah,
meeting,
sorry
but
about
this is Mr. Randy Lichtmüller, who is the new principal of Townsend Elementary School, stolen fair and square from Wyndham Southwest. Yeah, like what Scotty said, like it's pretty exciting to have someone of his caliber and his experience be joining our team. Scotty and I got to spend some time with him at the Principal Association conference 2 weeks ago. Had some meals together and just hung out and got to know each other a little bit better. And it feels like a really good match, and I feel like we're gonna just reap the benefits. So
great. No buyer's remorse yet?
No, not yet. And before he starts talking, I'll also say that we didn't really prep him for like what a report would look like. So I said, don't worry about it in the summer. We'll deal with it more in September. So I don't know what he's gonna say right now, but like, you know.
I probably have the most to say, right? Because it's been 6 whole weeks. So I'll just let you know that in the 6 weeks that I've been here, I've had the opportunity to meet with Renee Maluzzi to learn a little bit more about the school from her perspective, and I just want to acknowledge her and my gratitude for her and the time that she's given me. I spent some time working with teachers already. Some teachers who work as part of the PBIS committee. Did some work over the summer, and I was able to meet with them as part of their work, so I got to have some hands-on time with them. Also part of the EL education training that our teachers went through. I attended that. I was just at the Bridges training today, had the opportunity to work side by side with Katie there today. Really exciting. I hope you have an opportunity to come and see the playground. I'm really excited for the kids to come on the first day of school to see the playground. That was, I know that Greg mentioned that, but I think that that's going to be a highlight of the year. I met with the head of the select board. Allie came by to introduce herself, and we talked about some things that were common interest of the school and of the town. I got to attend a hazard mitigation meeting in town.
Boy.
So I'm telling you, in 6 weeks, there's been a lot to get my head around here. You know, Billy and Tim have done an incredible job in the building, so I also just want to echo, Greg's accolades for what they've been doing in the building. It's really been wonderful to see them there early in the mornings and staying late and just really pitching in and doing everything they can to get things ready, because they are doing everything in their power to compensate for people who, outside contractors and other people who maybe aren't, always able to stay on their schedules. They're overcompensating for all of that, and doing everything that they have to do to be ready for kids. Summer's the saddest time of the year for principals, and so we're just looking forward to that first day when everybody gets to come back and get to be with kids. In the meantime, I'm waiting for kids to, they've been trickling in. I've been getting photos of the bears that I gave out to kids before the end of the school year. So if those of you don't know, I visited school before the last day of school and handed out little wooden bears to all of the students and all of the staff, asked them to decorate them and take a picture of them and their bear over the summer if they traveled or if they were just relaxing in their backyard. Things like that. So I've been getting some of those, some interesting ones from staff and a couple from the students. And so I've included a few of those in my first newsletter to the community, and I'll be including some more this Thursday when I send up the Thursday notes this week. And that is my first informal board report to all of you. And on the 21st, when we fill out the formal registration for a student who we've committed to, we will have 110 students enrolled in the school.
And I did mention earlier the pre-K as well.
Yes.
Thanks, Randy. And welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Bob. Or am I missing? No, I'm not.
No.
Never mind. Jeez.
Three.
Sorry, it's getting late.
So yeah, there's just a couple of quick things. I think you were all forwarded Jamie's, I guess it's like a report out on the summer, summer camp, Rebels, what was it?
Yeah.
Rebels?
Summer Rebels.
Summer Rebels, yes. Anyways, the first time combining and having it all in one location, and you saw they got some good press with people playing in the foam and going to the pool, and it seems like it was a pretty good experience. There were a few minor things here and there that pop up, just like you'd expect, and I was very pleased Jamie handled it really well, informed me quickly, and we moved on. So felt really good about how that was managed. So that was a good situation. And I also want to mention, so we did have our leadership retreat at the end of last week up in Essex with everybody from the SU team. And we had a great time. We got some good professional learning, legal updates with Peter Lynn, and some excellent training on leadership by two members of the VPA, central office there. And they did a program for us on the lessons in leadership from Ted Lasso, where they intersperse a lot of different really cool, different people and different clips from the show, but also some other things as well. And we talked a lot about relationships and building trust, and also of the themes that, if you've seen Ted Lasso, that he extols in his players. So it was a very cool, creative thing. We made the VPA leads email on Friday morning when we showed up for the Ted Lasso training. We all had fake mustaches on to surprise the VPA, and so they took a group picture of us with our fake mustaches on. And they didn't need one though. As you can see, he's going full bore over there. But the rest of us were wearing them, and made it into the picture that was sent out to the whole state of principals. So it was kind of cool. Lori didn't know that till now. So. And then she was wearing one though. For the right price, I can distribute that. And as Lori is sitting here, obviously since the last time we met, we have a new director of finance. Heidi has started as of July 1. We're referring affectionately to Lori as the director of finance emeritus, as she hangs out for the next 6 months and getting people cross-trained and getting Heidi up to speed. And it's a very busy time of year for these guys. 5 months now, sorry. Sorry, don't count the days on it. But that's been a great transition. And Heidi has a new assistant business manager.
Andrew Davis.
Andrew Davis, who started in the office. We stole him from the local bank. And very happy to have him on board. So yeah, a lot going on there, and getting ready for induction tomorrow. All the new teachers arrive tomorrow morning in Newbrook. I'll be doing a little welcome there with them, and then Jen and Renee sort of run the program. And different principals come in. Dana's doing a presentation to the. Is that overstepping it if I call it a presentation? Probably.
Yeah.
The different folks in the leadership team each present something that we have just come up with for the new staff. And Scotty is still on the call here. He's doing something too, right, Scotty? Yep. So anyways, that'll happen for the next 2 days. And we'll be ready next Wednesday for opening day with all staff. We're doing that here at Ellen Gray, and we'll roll it out.
It's happening.
So, yeah, and I'm just gonna say it, like I've said this to people, like my second summer, very different than my first summer, in a very, very good way. And I had a lot of time to really just kind of reflect on the year and, sort of do some planning. That last year I was just in a, react mode the whole time. So feels very different starting the school year, and yeah, pretty excited about that. So that's where we are. And the last thing I'm going to say is we were mentioning the public school commission that has been formed. The interim secretary of education is doing regional visits, and we just got ours scheduled. I think it's actually going to be on Wednesday, Zoom or Microsoft Teams with all the regional superintendents. And then they're going to develop a local work group where I think be bringing Heidi, maybe Lori as well. I don't know if Stephanie is part of that as well. We'll figure that out probably. And we'll be doing these regional work groups in person with a bunch of the SUs around in our region. So that'll be interesting. We'll give you more information on what that exactly entails. I don't really know yet, but we'll be meeting with her the next day or two. So, yep, and that's what's going on in my office.
All right. Thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
Okay. ISun update.
So for those of you who don't know what ISun currently is, ISun has been the provider, the most recent provider or the owner of the solar field in Newbrook. So on June 3rd, they filed bankruptcy. Lori had been bugging them because we hadn't seen a payment for our FY24 fiscal year, and they didn't send it, and the next thing you know, we heard they filed bankruptcy. So needless to say, you never received your $26,000 for fiscal year 24. There's been a flurry of bankruptcy paperwork that has come through, and several of us have been in communication with Pietro, a lawyer that we use. There is a very strong chance that we will not ever get paid from the contract we have over the solar field. I think we know that the company is deeply in debt, and Chapter 11 you can file and not have to, the purchaser of the solar field does not have to keep the obligation of the contract. So we're sort of in a holding period. Wanted you to know that income is probably not going to continue. There's not much we can do right now. Pietro has asked us to just sit tight. We did look into potentially insurance coverage, but that isn't a thing when there's a bankruptcy. Our insurance company won't cover that. So I did ask Pietro what will happen with the solar field. It's not necessarily voiding out the rest of the contract, because after looking through the contract, there is the contingency. It's a 3-year contract that renews 10 times. So essentially a 30-year period of time. And at the end of that contract, it was their expense and their job to take the solar field down and leave the property as it was prior to the solar field. So I was nervous about that, but according to Pietro, that necessarily would still continue. But what that means with this new buyer, we don't know. So just wanted you to know that income potentially has dried up. We have not been paying for the credits that we get billed for. We did not want them to get lost in the shuffle of changing hands. Potentially we'll be paying that again at some point, but we're just waiting to hear what the courts finally do.
Good place for some modular buildings.
It's up for grabs now.
Yeah, it's our property, right?
It is. It's
For sale cheap.
just an easement to them, so.
Yeah, it's just taking out the panels.
Right, right. Although, you know, we potentially could take ownership of the panels. That was one of Pietro's thoughts, so.
We don't own the panels?
We don't. We gave an easement to the company to come in and have ownership of the panels on our property.
That's the $26,000 lease for the property.
So that easement has lapsed?
No, because the contract is still there. Unless the purchaser of all the assets chooses not to continue the contract.
Okay, wait and
So,
see.
Yeah, there's not much we can do as a debtor.
Pietro's on it, so.
Spend a lot in legal bills.
So, yeah, kind of a bummer.
That's the only thing I was gonna bring attention to. I
Oh.
wasn't sure when you wanted to talk.
Crystal, is it pertinent to our discussion?
I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt during principal reports, but we had sent correspondence and we weren't sure if you had received it. We're just trying to figure out where we find the agreement that went into effect July 1st, 1970, the original agreement.
In those boxes they carried through the dumpster.
No, actually, it's funny, Crystal had emailed me and I said I would get back to her, looking through the stuff in our basement, but in the meantime, and I haven't had any chance to let her know this, the folks here at Leland and Gray were cleaning out a space upstairs and came across an old safe that's in the storage closet, and through some means, I won't discuss how, they were able to get it open. And they did discover some documents, and so I will have something to scan to you tomorrow. I actually have it, I just haven't forwarded it yet. So there are some documents that are more about the vote to merge. I don't know if there's actual agreement, but there is some language around the state. So I'll get that to you tomorrow, Crystal. Apologies on the delay.
No problem. Thank you. I do have the articles of agreement that were voted on. The problem is Wyndham Town Office didn't exist till 1978. And whoever the clerk was kept all the stuff in their home, and his family burned the document.
Goodness.
Okay. Well,
Small towns.
I will send you what we have, and you can let me know whether or not it's sufficient.
Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, Scott. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to add this, but I just want to say thank you to Heidi for the reporting out about the solar field. I'm really personally very disappointed about what's going on right now with that, because we worked so hard to make that happen. Ken and Kim and all of us met weekly for a long time to make that happen. And it's just really disappointing that somebody can just bow out of their obligations, or a company can bow out of their obligations to the towns that we serve. So I just wanted to say that and say thank you to Heidi for being on it.
Thanks, Scotty. All right, Leland and Gray position. Dan.
I sent you folks a pretty detailed explanation. So I'm not going to go into all that, but I can just tell you the kind of the bullet point version. Was not able to fully fill a position a year ago. But things worked out with the 0.5 individual, and we maintained that course for this year. So there was a savings and an opportunity to hire, with your permission, a paraprofessional to support teacher development and skill, and also step in with some targeted student intervention under obviously teacher supervision. But we often talk about teachers want to go in and see other teachers practicing a skill or how they navigate different scenarios with students, but having staff on hand to enable teachers to do that is very rare. So this is a pretty unique opportunity for us. I did not want to pursue the route of a full-time sub, because I want this position to be more than that. This position will lean into that at times. I know we want to be careful of how vacancies are filled. we want to see substitutes in there, not teachers trading on a prep necessarily. Like, that prep is important. But with this position, teachers could schedule it so that they can, like, we have EL this year. We have 2 teachers that are going to be working on new EL techniques and curriculum. Oh, can I come see you today at 9:30? Sure. And they can schedule, so this person will go in for their class for maybe 30 minutes, and they can go watch their peer practice a skill. Same thing with high school advisory. all right, I'm confused at how you're doing this. I can watch you do it? Yep, this person's gonna be there. And then in between, working with teachers and specific students. So if we can train the individual with some interventions, I think it'll have a benefit to our students also. So the money's there, it's not any sort of an increase or whatnot, but it's the basics of it.
Is this a 1-year ask or a many-year ask?
At this point, it's a 1. And I'll have to advertise, see who applies and go from there. But it's pretty unique. I mean, I'll tell you up front, it's unique. You always hear of it, but I've never seen a school where, oh yeah, you can go watch a peer and work together, but it's pretty cool.
In fact, right before COVID, there was a group of teachers who had worked really hard to put together a peer observation system that they were ready to like roll out, and then COVID happened. But Dan's right in the sense that it's really hard to find the time to do that. You're giving up a prep, which is duly needed. So the ability to have someone cover a class while you go do that, even just for half an hour,
yes,
can be incredibly rewarding to see what other teachers are doing. Teaching is a isolating profession in a lot of ways because you're in a room by yourself with kids, and so to be able to see how other teachers respond to the same kids, to same content, to different content with different kids. I mean, there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from it. So.
It'll be interesting to see how the staff responds. Like at the end of the year, like what did they think? Was it valuable? How did it help them improve? And it'll be interesting to hear that feedback.
Can I ask another?
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you have had some feedback from staff that this is a thing that they're looking for.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit on maybe how often you expect each teacher to take advantage of this, or will it be more for some disciplines than others, or?
It's a great question. I don't have a specific answer. Internally, we have a group of teachers that have identified themselves as a mentoring committee, and they really want to make sure that they have their eyes on the new teachers and are supporting them correctly. The first 3 days of school are so important, and it's like I always think about like, what does this teacher do on the very first day? Like, what are those opening words? Because it sets so much of a tone for the year, whether students feel supported, safe, and they just go. But it's like you never get to see it. Like you can record it, but like to be there and just kind of. So leaning into those types of experiences, like again, I have two professional development opportunities tomorrow in my building. Advisory and also paragraph writing, and for teachers to be able to work together and see one another do the work is going to be important. It just we don't have that type of it's very luxurious, to be honest, but it kind of came out of couldn't fill the position, so I have a position at half, and it's like, all right, well, how can I make it good? So I'm going to let the mentoring committee really work with how to process with the staff to use it, but I also would like to and I'm not trying to overstep, but see if my AST can use support while providing interventions for students too, because there's always kids that need more intervention. So.
Sounds like a great concept.
I don't know if, do we need a motion? Okay.
All right. Just help us craft it.
It's not any additional money, but it's
Yeah.
a new position, so to speak, so that's why it is.
So I guess I would need a motion that I could advertise for a paraprofessional to support staff and student learning. The position will not be a full year position. It would be starting December 1st. So December 1st to the end of the school year.
Maybe you'd like to, thank you, Kate. Do I have a second?
Sure.
Thanks, Joe. And discussion? Drew?
My only concern is that, given the financial discussion we had earlier, the likelihood of being able to continue with added positions seems pretty slim. So I guess just go into it with an expectation that it's probably not going to make the cut for next year.
Well, it's going to be choices, right? And I think we're all gonna have choices ahead of us that are gonna be hard, but I appreciate it.
Good.
Is there would this person just be doing that all day, every day? Just in my mind, especially if certain teachers are scheduling at certain times, how is this person filling their time the rest of the day?
Sure. So again, I've never seen this done before. We're gonna have to figure it out as we go. The reality is, I didn't want a full-time sub because it's a full-time sub. They're gonna get pulled for subbing all the time. But the reality is, they are gonna get pulled for subbing sometimes. So believe me, there's always things to do, but I do really wanna see if we can get them oriented into a schedule where it is supporting staff development and student interventions.
Okay.
I know that's kind of a vague answer, but I feel like we've gotta develop it as we go, but I know they're gonna get pulled for subbing too in emergencies, but it's okay. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was satisfactory.
Anybody else? So Dana, not directly related to that, but you mentioned something about, wouldn't it be nice to see what these better teachers do, or the mentors? Have we ever thought of doing a video of,
Well, with students in the room, people start getting their, can I record students? And it's like, there's just a mix of
well, I mean, like just the teacher.
You could, and I don't know, I feel like it wasn't here, but I know people have talked about having systems, and you certainly could, and then record it, pass it on, then watch it later. You could. I think being there in the moment's much.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
No, your point is, you're absolutely right. But it's a step.
Yeah. All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Waiting for Sarah. Seeing none. Sorry, geez, getting late. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. It is there.
Getting early.
All right, contracts.
That you can ignore.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so
Executive session.
we do have executive session. Oh, okay. All right, actually, no, before you do that,
We got
I move to enter executive session for student matters under 1 VSA 313A7.
Second.
Everybody second.
I think that's the thing.
Officially, I think that was Drew with a second. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, all right, we will be moving into executive session. All right, we are back out of executive session, and I believe we have a motion.
Yep, I would like to make a motion that we approve the tuition requests for the 2 elementary school students, and that we do not approve the tuition request for the pre-K student, as 16 VSA section 821C doesn't address pre-K.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Yeah, sure. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing and hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Thanks. All right, I will entertain that final motion.
Emotion.
Lindsay?
Motions.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Absolutely not.
10 o'clock.
Have a good night, folks.
Nobody-
No.